Welcome to Inside the Lines, presented by BetMGM, joined by Rachel Doerrie and John Daigle. I'm Olivia Harlan Dekker. We saw two potential Super Bowl previews last week, so let's see how those games have impacted the odds to win Super Bowl 58. The 49ers are still the favorite despite their big loss to the Ravens, but their odds did drop slightly to plus 240, while Baltimore's odds improved over 25% to plus 400. The Dolphins came out on top against the Cowboys, but both of their odds remained steady. Same with the Eagles. The Chiefs lost to the Raiders, dropped their odds over 20% to plus 800, and the Bills won their third straight game, improving their odds slightly to plus 1100. Rachel, are you surprised that the 49ers are still the favorites, and who would you wager on now?
I'm not surprised that they're still the favorites. I think when you look at the list and the odds, the 49ers have the easiest path to the Super Bowl. And so I'm going to back them. I think at plus 240, there's not a ton of value here. But when you look at the path in the NFC to get to the Super Bowl, it is a lot easier than the path in the AFC, which of course includes the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Chiefs. It's kind of just a who's who there. And so I like the 49ers path. I like them at plus 240. I think they're going to be the most likely team to come out of the NFC. And at that point, they're probably going to be the favorite in any Super Bowl game. So that's who I'm backing here.
Right. John, do you think the Ravens are getting enough respect? And which team are you betting on?
It is respect, but I still agree with Rachel. And if you're taking the NFC, the 49ers, I'm going to the bottom of the board, though, because the AFC, in my opinion, is still wide open. And the Bills are just sitting here, not only fighting to get in, but top 4 in both yards and points per drive. The only other AFC team that ranks ahead of them in both categories, which is Miami, the Bills have already dunked on this year for a 28-point win. Miami's defense has improved dramatically since Jalen Ramsey returned in Week 8, but the point is the conference is wide open. So the fact we can take this number for the Bills at plus 1,100, I'd rather just sprinkle on that at the bottom and cross my fingers that they at least make it and then compete with the 49ers.
Okay, let's stick with futures. Switching from a market with little line movement to one that experienced a ton of movement, it's Coach of the Year. Dan Campbell's odds to win Coach of the Year improved over 35% after the Lions clinched the NFC North. Kevin Stefanski is tied with Campbell at plus 175 after the Browns won their third straight, moving his odds over 80% from plus 1,000 a week ago. Other big movers include AFC South rivals Shane Steichen and D'Amico Ryans. Both coaches' odds more than doubled. And John Harbaugh got his biggest win of the season for San Francisco, improving his odds over 30% to plus 1,100. John, how are you handicapping this market?
It's an odd award, unlike MVP, which I'm already done with. That's basically become talking politics with your family. You can't even have an intelligent conversation about it. But we've seen in the past, whether it was last year, Brian Daigle getting the award over Nick Sirianni, whether it was the year prior, Mike Vrabel winning because of what he scrapped together with the Titans defense. And in that year, Rich Bisaccia in 2021 actually finished third over Zach Taylor, who led the Bengals to the Super Bowl. It's not about the most wins and the coach that leads that offense to the most wins. It's truly about what the coach does with what he's given. And because of that, I do prefer Kevin Stefanski's matching odds alongside Dan Campbell, because everything that's happened to Cleveland this year, whether it's the starter going down, having to find Joe Flacco off the streets, Nick Chubb was injured. That happened so long ago. I know we forget about it. The Browns are down to their four-string offensive tackle. They've sifted through so many different defensive players this year and still have a top 3 unit across the board. So to me, Kevin Stefanski has done the most with the least, and he's the coach of the year.
Man, when you lay it all out like that, that is really a great point. Rachel, is there tons of value now on Harbaugh after the Ravens' convincing win?
I'm not really sure if there's a ton of value because of what John said. When you look at it, you do with what you're given. And last time I checked, they have Lamar Jackson, and that's a pretty good weapon to be given there. Whereas you look at Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, and he doesn't have anywhere near the same weapons. Yes, he's got Myles Garrett, but the rest of that defense has kind of just been put together. But the other thing that needs to be considered here is narrative. Media loves themselves a narrative, and Dan Campbell fits that narrative bill. The Detroit Lions won their first division title since I was born, which is a long time ago. And so when you look at that, the narrative right there, plus all of the overcoming of You look at the stuff that's in Hard Knocks. Yes, that was a couple years ago, but you look at what Dan Campbell has done to build this team, and I think subconsciously that is going to get taken into consideration on top of the coaching job that he has done this year to lead his team to the division title. So I think all things considered, I like Dan Campbell. I've had him for weeks. I think that was like a September bet for me. And so he's my guy, and I'm still going to back him.
Okay, I like that narrative too. It's time to focus on this week's action and look at who the public is betting on. Public has had a lot of success lately, and they're loving a division rivalry on Sunday Night Football, Packers and Vikings. The total opened at 45, but with almost 90% of the early bets and 95% of the money on the over, the totals moved up to 46.5. Both defenses gave up at least 30 points last week. Rachel, are you fading or siding with the public?
I am siding with the public on this one. I think when you look at it, you just mentioned both teams gave up 30 points, and Jordan Love has really found his groove as the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. He has a ton of targets. He's developed really good rapport, and so I think when you look at the relationships he's got with his receivers, Aaron Jones is back. You've also got A.J. Dillon. There's a really balanced offense there. And Minnesota is Minnesota. And yes, they're going to be without TJ Hawkinson, which is a major loss. But when you look at it, they still have offensive weapons. Nick Mullins showed he can get the ball down the field. And yes, he's turnover prone. So I think we might even see some defensive scores in this game. I think this is a high-scoring game because both teams don't seem to have issues scoring, and they seem to have all of the issues defending lately.
Absolutely. John, are you fading the public?
Unfortunately, I'm going to side against the public and Rachel, and I could be wrong easily based on the injury report, because that's all my analysis is on, is that I still think there are too many injuries up for debate right now between the Packers receivers, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks. We have to see if they play on Sunday night. It's not only TJ Hawkinson, but it's Jordan Addison trying to turn around as well. So given that environment, plus this Vikings defense has been a top 10 unit in every advanced metric you look at, EPA per play, drop back success rate from week 6 on, basically the second half of the season. So because of that, again, if they get healthy, I can see the under or the over happening, but until then, I do like the under instead.
Okay, let's take a look at another game the public is loving, but focus on the spread. The Eagles were able to hold on against the Giants, but failed to cover the spread. The public is expecting Philly to bounce back with 77% of the early bets and 90% of the money on the Eagles to cover against the Cardinals. The spread has dropped 2 points since it opened to 10.5. John, are you fading or siding with the public?
I get why the public is on the large number. I'm still concerned about the Eagles defense, though. They have had some easier tests the last 2 games, which has masked the fact that they've still struggled immensely. And even now we've seen on the ground of late, they're also leaking production there too. Saquon Barkley reached 80 yards and a touchdown on Christmas. Kenneth Walker went for 86 and a touchdown the week prior. And given the fact that James Conner is now coming into his own over the last month, the Eagles are still trying to deploy quite literally the most defensive backs of any team in the league so far, because they've had to grasp for straws due to injuries. I think the Cardinals could do enough here to hang around at such a large number and cover the spread.
Rachel, who do you see covering this game?
I'm going to go with John here, and I'm also going to fade the public. I think when you look at Philadelphia over the course of the season, I can see why this number is 10.5. But if you look at the last couple weeks, like John laid out, their defense just has not been there. And not only are they leaking yards through the air, they're leaking yards on the ground. And the James Conner situation, I mean, he has looked really good the last 3 weeks, and that spells trouble for Philadelphia. I mean, the reality of the situation is Jalen Hurts hasn't really looked like his MVP self of late either, and neither has that Philadelphia offense. And so when you look at it, it's kind of a combination of the fact that 10 is a huge number, and I think this is more a 7, maybe 6.5 type of line where I would be comfortable taking the Eagles. I think they win comfortably, but I don't think they cover by 10.5.
Okay, it's time to look at a couple trends for this weekend's action as well. The Buccaneers and Rams are covering over 70% of the time after winning their previous game. The Raiders are covering after a win in 2/3 of their opportunities, including 3 straight. Miami is 6-4 against the spread after a win and just covered against Dallas last week. Rachel, are you going with the Dolphins in Baltimore or maybe another direction?
I'm going another direction, and I am going with Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams. If you look at the numbers, when Matthew Stafford has his full complement on offense, whether it's Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, they are pretty much first in every single category. They are absolutely incredible. And when you look at this, yes, the Giants have sort of started to find their way with Saquon Barkley, but there are major questions at the quarterback position. And when you don't have your quarterback situation sorted out and you are going up against one of the best offenses in the league, whether it's through the air or on the ground, that is going to be a major problem. The Rams are in the playoff hunt, and when you look at it, this game really, really matters to them. I like the Rams here. I think Matthew Stafford and the rest of his offense are going to have a big game, and the Giants are going to struggle simply to keep up.
John, which one of these teams continues the trend and covers this week?
I completely agree with Rachel. You would think it's a trap game because the Rams do have to travel cross country here. But remember, they've had the 10-day rest because of the holidays. We all forgot they played the Saints last Thursday, but here we are again. And because of their full complementary of weapons now healthy, with those three on the field, Kyren, Puka, and Cooper Kupp, the Rams are averaging over 6 yards per play this year. I don't envision a scenario where the Giants stop them at all. If anything, I want to tag along with the over as well, because Tyrod Taylor, it's all relative, but has been the Giants' best quarterback, even coming off the bench last week in the second half and popping a few big throws for over 100 yards and a touchdown. So I love the Rams to cover, and I do like the points overall in this game.
Okay, let's check out another trend, but focus on totals, specifically for teams at home this weekend. The Colts were bad on offense and defense in Atlanta, hitting the under last week, but will return home this week where the over has hit in 6 of 7 games. The Eagles have also hit the over in 6 of 7 home games, including their game against the Giants on Christmas Day. And it's no surprise the Cowboys are on this list, hitting the over more than 70% of the time in Dallas. And NFC East rival Washington will have their work cut out for them at home against the 49ers this week. John, which home team's trend continues and hits the over?
It's too good of a spot to ignore what Brock Purdy did last week and then instead chase what's going on here with the Commanders defense, because Purdy still leads the league in completion rate under pressure. And the Commanders, since they traded both Montez Sweat and Chase Young, are creating pressure at the league's lowest rate. Not only that, the over is so interesting because it's a very small sample, but the last 2 weeks since Jacoby Brissett came off the bench, he's been on the field for 5 drives, and all 5 of those possessions have ended in a touchdown. We've seen backup quarterbacks come off the bench and run hot before coaches get film on them a handful of game ends. And so I think it's early enough with Brissett in this offense that Washington can also have success moving the ball. So love the over in this game.
Rachel, which total trend are you backing?
I do like that pick from John. I'm going to go in a different direction here with the Cowboys, though. When you look at this, the Cowboys at home, I mean, yes, they can score. We've all seen them score. Their offense with Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, they are more than capable of scoring. But what we've also seen in recent weeks is that they're struggling to defend. And so that can be a problem against the Detroit Lions. It's also an indoor game, and Jared Goff is really good indoors. He's also got a bunch of weapons, be it Amon-Ra St. Brown, the dual running back threat, and Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end who's really come into his own. Detroit's really moving the ball too. I think that this is a game that sails over even the high number of 53.5. When you look at this, the Cowboys defense is giving up a lot. The Lions defense is giving up a lot. And both offenses are capable of really explosive plays, especially when you consider guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. I think this game goes over by quite a few, actually.
Sails over. If that doesn't give you confidence, I don't know what will. You heard it here first, people. Okay, before we wrap up the episode, we're going to give you our blue chip bets, aka our best bets. Anything we love. It can be spread, money line, total, prop, whatever we want. John, what is your blue chip bet?
The Bears-Falcons game exists to bet on and not to watch. And although I got the Falcons number wrong last week because the Colts were getting points, it didn't make sense to me. It was obviously a trap spot. This is not the situation to then chase this Falcons offense because we know this Bears defense has been incredible. The Falcons are also no longer indoors. We're sending Taylor Heineke outdoors in the frigid cold of Chicago. I can confirm it's right outside. And the Bears defense can stop what the Falcons bring to the table and trying to run the ball. Ever since they traded for Montez Sweat, only David Montgomery has topped 70 yards against this Bears front seven. And that was in a blowout game script where the Bears backed off and just allowed the Lions to run out the clock. So the Bears match up so well with Atlanta that I think covering the field goal here, -3, is quite easy.
Are you a Bears fan?
I am not. This accent is not from Chicago. It is from Texas.
So.
But also, when you do this long enough, you're just unbiased, honestly.
There you go. I know what that's like. All right, Rachel, what's your blue chip bet?
Yeah, I like that pick from John. I'm going with the Indianapolis Colts. I think in a situation, I can't even believe after that game last week that I'm taking the Colts, but here I am taking the Indianapolis Colts. When you look at it, we're starting to get some film on the Raiders, and yes, the Raiders have been better. I mean, they beat the Chiefs, and that's a situation where that's a really emotional win, and the studies say that coming off an emotional win, there is always a letdown spot. They're also going on the road. This is a situation where, yes, they're going to be indoors. They're going to be in a controlled environment. But when you look at the combination of factors of the fact that the Colts are starting to be able to produce after an off week last week, and they're going over at home quite a bit, I think the Raiders are going to struggle here. So I really like the Colts to cover against the Raiders here, -3.5. I think when you look at it, this is a prime letdown spot for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Safe to say those are blue chip bets, not necessarily blue chip games. So thank you for giving us a lot to look for in some dogs this weekend. Guys, thanks so much for your insight. We appreciate you as always. Thanks for everyone for watching at home, and Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2024.